Jai Guru, everyone.
Jai Guru.
Guru.
Welcome to minute 56 of the podcast Awake Minute by Minute, where we're reviewing the life of Yogananda. And today we're joined by someone who's become a friend because they are an avid watcher and listener of our podcast. Marguerite, how are you?
Very well. Happy to be here and finally meet you.
Yeah, feels like we met you, but because you were so you're generous with your comments and your feedback and your compliments, so we feel like we know you even though we've never met till this occasion, so it feels very nice.
Oh, good. It's mutual.
So Marguerite, tell us a little bit about yourself. When did you come to meet Guruji and how did you meet him?
I want to say, let's say just a little background. When I was, I must have been less than 5 years old. My dad took me to this sanctuary in New Mexico called Chichimaya. It has holy dirt. And when I was a little kid, I saw there were crutches and glasses and wheelchairs left, and this hole with people where people dug out dirt. And I remember sitting there, and I just felt like, oh, I'm in heaven. And I had joy tears. Like I just wanted to stay there. There was such a beautiful vibration of just peace and faith. And so I never forgot that place. And then my mom, when we lived in Santa Monica, she would walk with me around SRF and Lakeside, Lake Shrine rather, holding hands with her friends. And it was pretty barren. They didn't have the lush landscape that you're probably seeing there now, Mike. It was just dry, desert looking, arid. And I remember just being in awe, walking around there. And I didn't have that Yogananda association. But later, I think this is maybe what happened. Who knows? I can't really explain the mystical way this works, but I remember lying on the beach with some girlfriends, and I had my little secret world. And I remember exploring my thoughts. And I would think, have it like a negative downer thought, and I could just see like colors and change and a different feeling in my biochemistry. I thought, oh, this is interesting. Okay, let me try an uplifting thought. And light, and I opened. I went back and forth, that like a little lab experiment. And I thought, there's something in here. What is that? How does it work? And so I think I put that question out there. And then when I was around 13, we went to my grandmother's house. And, when you're a teenager, it's like your parents are just total dorks. You don't want to be with them. And so I was flipping through a magazine at my granny's. She was back in college later in life studying behavioral psychology. And so she had a yoga journal magazine there. And I'm flipping through it. And then, boom. It wasn't the samadhi. It was a different. Oh, the one you have, Priyank. It was that photo.
Standard pose, yes.
Yeah. And it was boom, like Cupid's arrow. I knew that's it. And I probably tore out that page. I think I tore out that page and I ordered the lessons with my allowance money.
At 13, wow. So you'd been around Lake Shrine. So you didn't see the picture at that time, or you just stayed outside?
No recollection, but I'm associating these vibrations. Like I was just, the Chichimaya, which I did go back to when I was 20 to sit there. And now I feel like I've created sanctuary in my home. Like, it's just vibration. That's the only thing I can remember about.
So you took the lessons of what, you never looked back? Is that what happened?
Never look. I wobbled, but I never looked back. I got distracted by Maya for sure here and there, and I'm like, I got to get back. It was just each time I got swayed or distracted, I came back stronger, more deeply committed, and now there is just nothing, nobody, nothing that'll hold me back from that devotion.
Very nice. That's a very vivid memory you have of those very important points in your life, I imagine. That's very inspirational. I don't think I've got such vivid recollections I remember the general feeling, but not the points. You know, the you can pinpoint the exact moment, and I'm sure you can relive it if you just close your eyes. You can probably relive that energy. That's pretty special.
Oh, the chair I was sitting in, everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was kind of a weird child because I sensed things, the gifts that come about from meditation, but I squashed them because I really thought I was crazy. And so I found home with Guruji's teachings. It's like, oh, and so it's been my secret world, and it's been my secret world really up until, in a way, till I found you. And I'm not exaggerating, because I kind of kept it to myself. And because my work as an entertainer and a teacher, constantly with people. So then to balance it, I always just want to be alone. But then I started to feel alone in this lifestyle with Guruji. And I was hungering, and I think I asked, where is that? And then I found you. And then I found my SRF. I started volunteering at. So I've got fellowship there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Your local center would no doubt have like-minded souls, I imagine. Yeah, it's interesting you point that out, because in young adults, actually, we're probably the only the only community within Self-Realization Fellowship and Yoga Satsang Society that are allowed to engage in discussion in formal meetings that are held at the centers. So all the other meetings or meditations, that's masters readings, and you read them and you meditate, you reflect, and then you meditate some more. Whereas young adults meeting, we have this special engagement, and this podcast is really just an extension of that. So Marguerite, you've just joined one of our young adults, our 56th young adult meeting.
Young whippersnappers, right? Eternally youthful.
Eternal youth, yes.
So age is one, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
True.
1 year old.
I think it's a bit different when you're in a center where you have monks, right? Because then you can have that kind of exchange as well.
Okay. Very nice. Yes, for all those fortunate few with all our centers around the world. London's not one of those, although we have a monk's visit coming in a couple of weeks.
Not yet.
So pretty
One
excited.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have the flat ready, but no inclination from Self-Realization Fellowship yet to send the monks to us. But yes, tell us, Marguerite, about you. You actually went to the premiere, I understand, the show, one of the first showings of the Awake film. Tell us about that experience. How was it? And you met the team. Is that the first time you'd met them?
Yes. Frankly, I was like, why am I here? Who am I?
Why were you there?
Pardon me? Pardon me?
Why were you there?
I said, why were you there?
This couple that produced the Sedona Yoga Festival, in fact, a lot of situations said, why am I here? They, out of the blue, sent me a Facebook invitation to be a presenter at the Sedona Yoga Festival. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Teach? Or they want me to do comedy because they saw that I do comedy. And I said, okay. And so Heather and Mark Titus, the Sedona Yoga Festival, they were sponsors of the Illuminate Film Festival, where Awake was premiered. So get a load of this. Yogananda had his hand in this because this guy, Mark Titus, the co-producer, he put it in Facebook message. He said, Yogananda came to me and told me to hire you.
What?
Wow.
What?
And it really shouldn't be that surprised because that's how he works, right? So, but still, and this guy was not even a devotee. He's just kind of a mystical person, Mark Titus. And so, of course, I had to go. And so I did 3 years in a row as a presenter there at the Sedona Yoga Festival. And then this woman, the creator, founder of the Illuminate Film Festival in Sedona, whom I got to meet, she welcomed me, or Mark and Heather from Sedona Yoga Festival said, you've got to have Marguerite at the Awake premiere, because she's been with Guruji or Yogananda since whatever, as a teen. I'm like, okay, so here I go. And so when I got to speak to Paola. We spoke on the phone. We did some Facebook messaging before the show. I can't quite recollect how that came about, but we had some interesting discussions. She was more interested in discussing her children's gifts.
Paola de Floria is one of the directors. Is that correct?
Yes.
And Lisa Lehman, yeah, just for audience that have forgotten who Paola is.
Yes. So, but she was more interested in talking to me about the gifts that I was born with, my empathic and the, seeing light and stuff, because her children had those gifts. And I said, I used to feel like I was crazy. Let them know this is natural. And so we had that. And then there, I didn't really get to interact with them because everybody was so busy. It was this huge production. And the house was packed, the theater was packed. Sedona Yoga Festival people on one side, and a woman named Sharon Foster. She was the lead programmer, and she and I became dear friends. Sharon Foster, the best person in the world to hug. And but I didn't have any really interaction with them, because they had the publicity photographers coming out to the red carpet. And so then they put me there on the red carpet with them. And again, I'm like, why am I here? And I'm in the center. I knew why I was in the center in front, because I'm the shortest. And so I joked about that. And then the monk, really tall monk, he came and sat cross-legged in the center and made us laugh.
Brother Balananda, that is. Yes, I've got a picture here.
Yeah.
I'll make that the cover of this episode. Lovely, lovely.
Oh, how cute.
Yes.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
So then when I got to hear them speak to the audience member special talks, let's see, Paul Rader, I can't remember his name, the husband, and Lisa and Paola were up on stage talking, and they also had this feeling like, why am I here? Because they got hired to do this. And of course, this changed their entire life. They talked about the stories, how Guruji kind of took over, and they were flowed into getting everything they needed. And they're now.
Ooh, share with us one of them if you're allowed, if you think you'd be allowed to.
Yeah, I can't remember specifics, but if you're tuned in, you get guided to everything. And so there's a saying that some film people say, the obstacle is the path. So you have a plan, a script and whatnot, and then there's obstacles. The sun's going down or something breaks, and you find a better way. So they kept bumping into obstacles. Maybe like Guruji, he bumped into obstacles and kept finding his way. I can't remember specifics, but how this film came together, just the right information, just the right images, footage.
Lovely. And what was the energy like at the screening?
People were riveted, just riveted. And the people sitting next to me, the Sedona Festival people, they were elbowing me when they started hearing about Guruji's challenges. Like, oh, I didn't know he went through all that. And I found that fascinating, because in his teachings, he says, fiercely protect your peace. He tells that story about be a hissing snake, set boundaries pretty much. And so I picked up on that. So I figured that was part of his way. And so people were really flipped out over that. Like, he was not immune to human experiences. So that was a point that people were really shook by, and maybe inspired, because a lot of the new age thing is like, oh, everything's perfect, just be positive, everything, instead of facing reality, the mankind's reality, that is.
Yes, which is a good segue into this minute, because this minute 56 talks mostly about neuroplasticity, doesn't it, Chris? You've got a good connection. Do you want me to lead, or are you happy? Do you want to summarize this bit?
Sure. I can jump in here
Yes.
and say that following on the previous minute where we were looking into Guruji's conversations with one of the devotees at the time to say, can I go smoking? Can I drink? Can I be promiscuous? And Guruji was like, yeah, sure. You can do all these things, but I can't promise you that the desire to follow the teachings and do the practices and meditation so on won't fall away from you. And then we go into this minute where we're looking more at the reason why. So we have the narrator speaking, and then Newberg comes back in to say that Yogananda was well ahead of his time, and we've talked about this Yogananda his words aging well, and this is just another aspect that Yogananda is talking about, the grooves in the brain being created with the electrical pathways like a phonographic record, and your life will follow those grooves. But this is some 50 years ahead of the modern neuroplasticity concepts and understanding that we have today. So another aspect of Guruji's teachings that has just aged better and better as the decades roll on. So yeah, we can jump into looking at that, but Mike, I think you want to make a comment first.
Yes, it reminds me of when we talked about the episode when we talked about Jesus and said Jesus had no vocabulary to talk about the energy in the spine, and that's why he referred to the serpent. And it's the same for Guruji. That was the word neuroplasticity was not even around probably, because he was very literate in a lot of scientific context. So he would have probably known about it if it was there. And now scientists just look at it and go, oh, this guy, he already talks about it 50 years before it was a thing, which is so Guruji.
Absolutely. Priyank.
Yes, this actually, it's a good kind of, the content really sets up the scene for like Andrew Newberg's elements, the neuroscience. He was a neuroscientist, wasn't he? So he's it sets up, because he talks about the science of it in more detail with like brain scans and things like that. He's done that in previous minutes, and also like I think it's going to come a bit later as well. But phonographic records, I mean, they're like the thing now, aren't they? Who's got a record player?
I actually do. I got one for my birthday recently.
I knew it. Ever since you moved to California, this is the kind of stuff you get, isn't it?
I don't have it with me because I'm not at home now, but I found when I went through my mother's stuff, she had a record with a talk of Dhyama and then some cosmic chants on records, and I was like, the only thing I can do with this now is buy a record player.
Have you got one with that big like brass speaker?
No, it actually has no speaker. It has Bluetooth, and then
That's not real, man. That's not real.
It connects to a Bluetooth
get the
speaker.
proper one. The wind up one.
That's how it's done these days, Priya.
Yeah, my parents actually have one at their house, but I think it was destroyed in some teenage party many years ago, actually.
Gosh.
But they had like all the Beatles, collections and everything. It's very, very cool. Very, very cool. But it is interesting that Guruji was so far ahead of his time, because he talks in the lessons about things like that aren't in the literature, life trons, for example. And I can't wait for more language that will be applicable to some of Guruji's teachings, and the teachings of yoga in general. We talked about it before, science and maybe yoga. It's kind of coming full circle, maybe touching eventually in years to come, and how the two might meet in the decades to follow, as more research and more money gets directed towards the more subtle layers of reality. You know, we're coming to understand the teachings that have been in yoga and Guruji's teachings for thousands of years. Priyank.
Yeah, Western physical sciences, I'm sure you're referring to, because
yes,
we also refer to yoga as a science, don't we? And in India, they consider it as such. Similar with Ayurveda and other things that Western medicine and Western physical sciences wouldn't consider in their bracket. But yeah, the lifetrons you mentioned, which is a good one. Prana is obviously another one, but thoughttrons is the other one that he uses as well.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful play with words, isn't it? That spurs imagination to think, oh wow, there's so much that we don't quite grasp yet, and Guruji's seeing this and is probably not willing, I would say, to go into it in too much detail, because it might be a little bit too far ahead of the time. So you have to teach in a different way and essentially be patient for everybody else to catch up. You can't give it too quickly, can you? It's like you know, we saw in the stories with Babaji deliberating, you know, when to bring Kriya Yoga into the world with the lineage of the gurus, and it's the right time to bring this in. So Guruji, I'm sure, would have had more information on what he could deliver. Marguerite, would you want to jump in?
Yes, Chris, kind of on the heels of what you just shared about the timing of people receiving particular information. I just read some brain research in the last couple of years with all the tumultuous, you know, social upheaval around here, especially in America, civil rights issues, that people have a particular brain mindset, a belief. If they hear a contrary view, and this ties, I think you talked about this, Mike, the brainwashing, the racism. If a person hears a contrary view to their belief, the brain perceives it as a threat, like they're gonna get killed, and then they have that violent reaction. Someone that on the heels of that, and then I had a story too about an experience I had. My very first yoga teaching job was at a retirement home. And I got to see this kind of broken record people digging roofs. By contrast, I'd go in every week and these people would have the same story. Oh, my son didn't call. My sister did this thing to me 30 years ago. And they would have the hunched spine. And I saw the what's the word? The connection, kind of like the spine and this repetitious thought. Oh, that feels uncomfortable. So almost everybody was like that. I could just predict, okay, here we go, get ready. She's gonna say the same old story, and I'd give them some exercise. But then there was this woman that came in, a new person, and she had an erect spine, and she carried herself with grace, and she showed interest in the moment. In fact, she was very interested in my love life. There's like, oh, so you dating anybody? and we would discuss things like, oh, there was an opera singer that was big at that time. He was on television. Did you see him? I said, yeah, I think it was Pavarotti. Yeah, so she was in the moment. And then I saw her change pretty rapidly. She said, Marguerite, I'm just having a hard time being in this fight. She didn't say the word vibration, but that's what she meant, these people, this attitude. And gradually her spine went like this, and she's walking with the cane. And I could feel it too, the mass consciousness, that dense, depressed, suppressed, and I quit. I couldn't, maybe now I could have the strength, but back then I had to leave.
Yeah, it's really good insight on that. And actually, it comes to a question that I wanted to ask everybody, but I'm going to hold it until the end, if that's okay. But Priyank,
yeah, Guruji often says that, quite, environment is stronger than willpower. So that's certainly seemed to have been the case in your experience there. My Yeah, I was gonna. My mum passed away recently, and last year she was quite ill. Last year we were considering putting her in a nursing home. We tried it and it just wasn't. Wasn't conducive. It just it didn't feel right, and potentially for the same reason as what you outlined there, Marguerite.
Good.
Yeah, and reading a book on Sadhguru's death book, we've talked about it before. He talks about your environment when you're passing as well. Super important to be able to detach from the environment that you're in, because it can trigger these memories, and it's not good for the transition phase.
Oh, you've read it now. How far are you through it?
3/4 of the way through.
Oh wow, impressive.
Getting it done, pick it up.
You're really into death.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, as Sadhguru put it, we should prepare for the longer journey ahead, and there's the longer journey beyond this mortal life that we don't prepare well for. So you should prepare for your death as readily as possible. So it's a great book.
Yeah, definitely. Like just going back to my mum's example there, like she had interestingly motor neurone disease, which is something I suppose similar to what we're discussing here in terms of the degeneration is like the reverse of what Yogananda is kind of saying here, that your neurons kind of degenerate, and it impacts actually all of your physiology. But so we knew, with the condition, you know where it's going, and you know the trajectory and the time scales roughly, because you know how quickly things are getting worse. So if you don't prepare for that moment, if you know, then really it was so liberating for my whole family who was involved to go through and explore this death book that Chris mentioned, and really prepare for this point. We did various things like chanting and meditating and really trying to raise her consciousness at the last moment. And like, for example, things like taking away like attachments, like for example where she sleeps, we took away pictures of family from where she sleeps and put pictures of the gurus, for example, because that's where she spent a lot of her time. So you should, and that's where she passed actually. And you don't want pictures of someone that you're attached to when you're making that transition, because then it makes it all the harder to depart. But yeah, I was just it's so interesting you said that, Chris, because preparing for death, for not just for yourself, but if you have some care responsibilities for loved ones, then it's equally important. Yeah, Mike.
It's so interesting that you say that. Like, take 2 points away from this. One is that as you get older, you probably want to get your inner life more in order, right? So there's this thing, right, that your mind, you made a bad experience, and your mind keeps bringing this up every single day, every hour, keeps torturing a rerun of it over and over until you can actually let it go, right? And the older you get, the more important it probably is that you free yourself of those experiences. And the picture with the gurus is so funny, because I have to think of my dad. Like, he's not very mobile, and he usually looks at the same wall in the room all the time, and he has like a picture. I think it's like 4 feet by 2 feet of Babaji in front of him.
I remember, yeah. I remember. Yes, awesome picture.
Yeah, and I think that probably is great, right? Because you keep getting the reminder.
Interestingly, in the autobiography, he says, even if one utters the name Babaji, they attract an instant blessing. In your dad's case, no doubt he used to utter it, before, but now he's looking at it and thinking about it. So even the thought of Babaji, no doubt, has a similar effect if done with, devotion and sincerity.
There's maybe an assumption built into this whole conversation on neuroplasticity that we actually know what it is. Shall I just pause for 2 seconds? I'll come to you, Marguerite, in a second, and define what it is. I did a Google research, so you don't have to rely on my neuroplasticity to be working appropriately here. But online various definitions. But the human brain, it's composed of approximately 100 billion neurons. And when I'm reading this, I'm picturing suns. I'm picturing suns in like a galaxy, the way that works. And every birth, when you're born, you have about 2,500 synapses. But by the time you're, 3, you have 15,000 synapses per neuron. So it grows exponentially in a very short amount of time. So they say, when you're young, your learning curve is so great, but partly because of this. And really, it's understood today that the brain possesses the remarkable capacity to reorganize these pathways, synapses between the neurons, and create new connections, and in some cases create new neurons. And this is the concept that's known as neuroplasticity or brain plasticity. I'll pause here. Praying to just put your hand up in relation to this. So jump in.
Yeah, so before we go to Marguerite, quickly, just to put that into context. So like you said, each one of those neurons has, how 15,000 synapses, is that what you said? Something along those lines. So yep. That's just one neuron, you have billions. So put this into context, a chessboard, an 8x8, chessboard, squares chessboard, with, 16 pieces, 32 pieces. Apparently there's more combinations of like what the trajectory a game could take than there are atoms in the universe, apparently. So just this is a small chessboard, and here we're talking about a synapse that's like got 15,000 connections and there's billions of neurons. So the capability for the human mind is just it's just phenomenal. You can't, if you can't even contextualize, or we can't even understand a simple chessboard, let alone something that's got infinite more layer of complexity. That's thought I'd put that. Yeah, Marguerite.
Oh, I'm so glad I got stalled on my input, because the science it's just daunting, and that's one thing that actually makes me laugh so much when I read Guruji's teachings, the way he puts things in perspective. I mean, like the latest one I read was about being attached to this mud ball of earth. Because there's this little mud ball spinning, and so yeah, in the scope of the things, like these numbers, the two of you are coming up with the statistics. I'm glad you explained that, the science. About the rituals, Mike and you, Priya, talked about your dad and your mom and removing those old familiar objects, and I guess your dad, he did it of his own volition. He just has, that big poster. And so I call these affirmative objects. And I make a point of decluttering, and as my life changes, my values change. And I make a point of getting rid of, what would it be, I guess, negative objects, things with negative associations that stir up negative old memories. And, Guruji is like, taking over my world over here. And beauty or things associated where there was a kindness or some friendship or love, keep those things, and also affirmative words. And so I like that as we're preparing for death, Chris, to prepare elegantly and graciously.
It's something we're not great at doing in the Western world. We really don't talk about death. You mention it in a household, and it's like you get shut down very, very quickly if you mention death in a Western household. But it's super important to not only live well but to die well, right? And sorry, just to go back on this, not to dwell on the scientific side of things too much, but online, seeing the human brain has more than 125 trillion synapses. That's roughly equal to the number of stars in 1,500 Milky Way galaxies. And why I'm kind of saying this, why I'm emphasizing these numbers, is that whenever I think about it, I picture stars, I picture, the universe and the galaxies. I'm obsessed with that. I love that subject. And it just makes me think, when we talk about the Crown Center, is it the
Sahasrara?
Sahasrara, yeah, sorry, your
Sahasrara, yes.
Sahasrara chakra. So located at the top of the head, it's known as the 1,000-petaled lotus. And when I think about that, I see a bright star, glowing brightly. So I love this subject. And it's also known as the center of a million rays because it radiates like the sun. So that's when you talk about visualizing, closing your eyes, seeing light. When I think about this subject, I see what Yogananda really and yoga talks about. It's almost quite literal, isn't it? With the electrical synapses firing off, you can see it in your mind's eye. And a couple of things that I saw online that I thought was interesting was how to increase neuroplasticity and why is it important. And they say various things like, good sleep, regular exercise, and increasing activity in general, like learn new things, travel to new places. These things all help increase your neuroplasticity. And why is it important? Well, it would be difficult to learn or otherwise improve the brain function if you don't focus on these things, sleep and exercise in particular. But as we know with Guruji, when he's talking about this, he's talking about meditation. So you can rewire your brain and smooth out the bad habits through this process. So that's not widely talked about when you do a typical Google search. But if you delve into it further and do a more specific Google search, there's tons of research out there, which is really inspiring to see. So if this is a subject that you like, there's modern research happening today that is backing up what Guruji was talking about quite some time ago. Mike, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, because it's actually an amazing point that they make in the movie and that Guruji makes many times, because those grooves in our brains, they are actually 80-90% of our lives actions. They happen because of them, right? A lot of things happen because of our habits, and they happen because we were in a similar situation before, and this is our reflex now. We react like this, and if we really want, we can have the will to change those grooves, but that doesn't change it yet, right? They're still there. And actually removing them, changing them, is like you said, making active decisions in the other way, or you said expanding your horizons. But Kriya Yoga is like the supreme path to do this, right? To unlearn things and mold your mind into this mind that you actually want to have, not the one that you have right now.
Yeah. Priyank?
Yeah, I was going to make that similar point that Mike made about Kriya. So the best way to improve brain neuroplasticity and is they've researched it, haven't they? It's in the film. Meditation. You mentioned like learning new skills, seeing new places, meeting new people, all these fantastic things that put you out of your comfort zone. But Andrew Newberg talked about meditation and the impact that has to the brain function. But something that's something similar that Marguerite commented on recently, and she said something about psychoneuroimmunology. Psychoneuroimmunology. Marguerite, tell us what that was.
Yes, those, if you break it down, psycho relates to the mind. What?
Yeah, it was one of those hospital pass questions.
That was the thinking. That was a classic hospital, classic Priyank hospital pass. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. That's why. Okay. So I'm the expert now, right? Yeah. So psychoneuroimmunology. I love all those syllables. So psycho relates to the mind, neuro, the nervous system, and immunology, immune. So the mind, your psychology, your nerves, and your health are all interconnected. Psychoneural. And so I wanted to kind of piggyback that on what you shared, Chris, about that science too, the stars and whatnot. Because in quantum physics, I'm going to paraphrase it the way I understand it. Quantum physics, every cell of your body is a hologram of the universe. So what we're thinking and what we're feeling, nourishing in our universe within every little cell. I picture the cells like little emojis, like are those little cells smiling or are they grumpy? So I get that does tie in, because I do monitor with meditation, right? We're going in and observing ourselves and looking at the thought habits, identifying the emotions, and then using that conscious will that we're taught to use to replace that old habit. And that's another thing about habits. Guruji says somewhere in the teachings that if you have a bad habit and you want to let it go, look for a replacement. And that makes me think of the musician too, right? He doesn't have to give up, casual sex and smoking and drinking, but hey, get up, just try meditating. That might replace something eventually. What else is there? There's something else about that. Well, it kind of slipped my mind, so maybe I'll come back to it. Did that answer your question about psychoneuroimmunology?
Yes, thank you.
In Guruji's lessons, he talks about, I think there's a prayer in there, and again, it's around lesson 43 of the old lessons. And there's a prayer in there that talks about making prayer to mother, to say, make yourself more appealing than the other more shallow interests of life and Maya, let's say, to make thyself more appealing. And that is something on this topic. It is bang on point, because when I was looking through this minute, I thought to myself, okay, well, if life is it is what you make it, it is what you think and speak and act, and then you have these subtle grooves making it more easy to do those things again and again. What lessons do I take from it, and what do I understand from what Guruji is telling us? And one thing that popped into my mind was Guruji talked in one of the little books that you can buy from the bookstore called The Law of Success, using the power of spirit to create health, prosperity, and happiness. I'll just read a short paragraph here. He talks about failures should arouse determination. So even failures should act as stimulants to your willpower and to your material and spiritual growth. When you have failed in any project, it is helpful to analyze every factor in the situation in order to eliminate all chances in the future that you might repeat the same errors. And then he goes on to say that the season of failure is the best time for sowing the seeds of success. The bludgeon of circumstances may bruise you, but keep your head erect. Always try once more, no matter how many times you have failed. Fight when you think that you can fight no longer, or when you think that you have already done your best, or until your efforts are crowned with success. And I thought that was great. And really, it teaches me empathy for those who are compelled to do wrong. And we talked about it before. Sri Dharma said that there's no evil, there's just ignorance, and people doing the same things over and over again that are compelled. So that was one thing that I took from it. What about you, Mike?
It's so beautiful. Thank you for reading this, Chris. I sometimes think Guruji is such a good motivator. Sometimes I feel like, imagine you're like at a halftime break at a football game, and Guruji comes in, takes a water bottle, throws it against the wall, and goes like, and then he would say things like this, right? Like even if you can't fight anymore, you have to keep on fighting, right? And the other thing is, I feel like he puts you in control, and he gives you all the responsibility for your own failures. So it wasn't, because oftentimes when we fail, we think, oh, that happened to me, but it did not. You created it, right? So and that's why he says the way to make it from happening again is analyze every single thing that happened, and then try to make failure impossible the next time. And that's super helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's inspiring, isn't it? Without he was always a loving teacher, and maybe appropriate for this day and age where we're a little bit more sensitive than what maybe some sects have been when it comes to improving oneself. So that was something that I thought, from this minute, they really did spend quite a bit of time actually on this aspect, and it's quite key and quite essential to Guruji's teachings, which is the power of meditation and Kriya Yoga can kind of overcome all of your worldly habits. So dedicate yourself, make time for that. Above all else, meditate every single day, without fail. Marguerite, jump in.
I wanted to backtrack a little bit about the power of Kriya and in terms of habits, in relation to habits. There was a talk I heard by Brother Saralananda. He always cracks me up. And these guys are hilarious, these the monks and the sisters. But he talked about how Kriya fries the samskaras, which are kind of like habits, right? So, and he's like this gleeful, crispy fry those samskaras. So I find that visual very helpful.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this minute is it's quite straightforward, isn't it? And it overlaps with the minute prior. And we talked a little bit about in a minute prior how meditation can suddenly switch that light bulb on and make past habits. Priyanka, you mentioned it in last minute about maybe eating meat, or myself, I been in a life where drinking alcohol, eating meat as well, stopped immediately after I did a 48-day cycle of meditation, without me even desiring that to happen. It just all fell away, and I couldn't explain it to my family and friends. So I experienced this phenomenon that Yogananda is rightly pointing towards firsthand. So we'll not go too much further into that. But
we don't want to talk about your previous favorite drink or anything, no?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's not that.
Yeah. Well,
potato chips. I'm not giving those.
Yes, potato chips as well. Yeah. But Brig, you had a question on
yes,
on
I
cards.
did. Crisps, Marguerite, for our other non-American. We also call them crisps.
Crisps.
Potato chips. But, yeah, anyway, so going back to some of the script, like he said, so repeated performance of an action creates a mental blueprint, causing formation of subtle electrical pathways in the brain, somewhat like grooves in a phonograph record. Your life follows the grooves that you yourself have created in the brain. Your life follows grooves that you yourself have created in the brain. So I thought I'd put it out there for you three lovely people. What grooves have you created that your lives now seem to be following? Marguerite?
Hands up.
My hand on my forehead, because I was thinking about those times. I mean, it's like, talk about a broken record. Oh my gosh. And then eventually you catch on. Well, I caught on that, what? I have a part in this, repeating this same old tired story. And
the records is going around and replaying that track, right?
So now I pay attention. I call on Guruji, come on, help me make it really clear for my dance brain, get some new grooves growing and are developing, and help me. What do I need to do differently? And now I'm used to it, but there'd be that fear of the unknown, and then even like the old patterns have a certain comfort level to them. And so then I guess it's just easy to backslide into them, but and just being comfortable with misery, and then going through enough suffering, I'm like, okay, that's it. So now I don't let myself suffer so long. And now it's just like, you show me what to do. I'm listening. I just sure, we all have our repetitious stories.
I'll Chris, you want to come in?
Do you know, you talk about what grooves our lives follow. The groove that I'm sure many of us can relate to is the family. And for me, family is, very dear to my heart. I'm very blessed with, a great family. But my life is very different now to what it was before. And the grooves that I have they don't groove with maybe the lifestyle that I once had in Northern Ireland. And, to be quite frank, it is quite challenging at times to make those grooves kind of harmonic. Marguerite, you mentioned before about having a life, with SRF and having a life elsewhere, and maybe having support networks are very, very important. Going to the London Centre was super vital for my anchoring of that groove, the groove of going to meditate and to do that for years was essential for me. So the grooves that my life follows are one of almost different grooves that I just try to then stabilize as best as possible, so I can go back to the groove that I want to create for my own life, which is meditation. But yeah, maybe some people can relate to that. I'm not typically blessed with a SRF family, but that's my sharing. That's how much you've got out of me today, Frank.
Mike?
Yeah, I think what you just said, Chris, is kind of spot on, because I think not every groove is wrong in your life, right? So there's just the way your mind works in a certain way, and it creates your personality, and that's, a lot of it is fine. You always just have to trace those down that get you in the wrong place mentally, or that make you do things that keep you from like spending time with God, spending time with the family, the people you love, right? And then when you introspect, you oftentimes find tendencies in your life that kind of you go like, why did this happen? And you go like, oh, I felt this emotion, and then I did this, and I feel like you have to be very selective by rooting out like Marguerite said, the samskaras, find them and try to start working on them, identifying them first. And that's kind of part of it. And once you know what you want to change, makes it a bit easier. And I feel, and like you said, Kriya, I feel like doing Kriya yoga makes everything a bit more lofty. Like they're not really grooves anymore. They become more like things floating around. And then also prayer helps a lot, and to eventually just uproot a bad tendency or a bad groove and remove it.
Talking about prayers and affirmations, this I really like this phonograph, record spinning example, because we're in the cycle of samsara is very well represented in this record of the grooves that we've created, and we're trying to come away from those grooves, till that needle goes away to the outside and flies off. But essentially what we want is to just discard that record and put a new divine record, or join into the golden record. But how do you, I think the great affirmations that really I think would help us do that are like thy will be done, not mine, and thou art the doer, not I. So these things where you're like dedicating your actions to God and a higher purpose. I think these are the things, and if you really make these affirmations not just as nice sound bites, but actually like embed them into like every walk of your life, and like even you can print them out, and like I know SRF is really keen on like these little cards that have got these lovely lovely sayings. So I've got them all printed around my house, and I just find one every now and then. Even like the words in the cosmic chants, I've written them out like near the door of my house. I've written out what so what do I write? Know it now or in 1,000 incarnations, and I put an arrow towards the meditation room.
Nice.
Chris.
Nice. Yeah, I just wanted to go back to what I was saying, just to be a bit more specific. Guruji talks a little bit about, fasting and these cycles. Let's say that it's beneficial for the body, the mind, the spirit, the soul. Fasting is something that I really struggle with when I go home. I go home and my mum's there and she's cooking. She's like, getting me tons of food, wants to fatten me up. The typical kind of behavior. And I'm sitting there saying, please, I need to fast for 3 days. And that's just like, oh, mind blown. You're not going to be healthy after not eating for 3 days. Those are the gurus, the rhythms of life, that can be quite challenging to implement in social orders. Can you go out and hang with friends and go out to restaurants and when you're fasting, these subtle grooves of social interactions, I find, can be most disruptive. And to your point, Guruji did say quite often that your environment is stronger than your will. So that's to be more specific what I was really trying to mention.
Marguerite?
Yeah, from the front door to mom's fridge door, I know the feeling. Oh my goodness, yeah, that social discernment. I remember reading about that. It seemed like one of the very first lessons in the old lessons, that was the first thing, was be mindful of the company you keep. And so one of the temptations, I think, is the most seductive, is seeking approval. Well, you do have the family conditioning. That's one that is really tough. If your values start to change from family members, and to have to grieve that, letting go of them. And so I find Guruji's affirmation he says, daily affirm, I have no father, I have no mother, I am eternal spirit. Oh, and I've had to work on that. And so the seeking approval thing, which is propagated in our society, is like, oh, congratulations, you got a like on your whatever, woohoo, and so letting go of the need for approval from everybody. If Guruji, that his will is guiding me to do something, and somebody's not meant to go along or meant to extend to somebody outside of the family, I call them assignments. I get assignments like who to help, and I just follow through. So there's this aspect that I feel that is very difficult. It's this need to grieve after having to let go of certain social situations and break away from their needing that approval. There's a loneliness factor, and I find that each time I become more liberated in Kaivalya, I have to grieve. It's me letting go of this world more. And all I need is the approval here, where I feel in complete integrity as much as possible. So that grieving aspect, I think, is it's underrated, the need, because there's a new level of loneliness in a sense, even though you're trading it for something better. I hope that makes sense.
Nice. Mike?
Yeah, makes absolute sense. This transition is not an easy one. From approval of your immediate family to approval of only Guruji that you care about. Priyank is going to tell me off now because he doesn't like when I give away what day we record our podcasts on. But I found what Marguerite just said reminded me of today's quote from the Spiritual Diary, and I just want to read it out because it's a very similar. It says, every day you should sit quietly and affirm with deep conviction, no birth, no death, no caste have I. Father, mother, have I none. Blessed Spirit, I am He. I am the infinite happiness. If you do again and again repeat these thoughts day and night, you will eventually realize that you are an immortal soul.
Jivananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. That is the Sanskrit of that. Yeah.
Nice. We have a couple of cards to talk about Priyank, maybe you know a little bit more about them, about the background messages for
Yes,
Marguerite.
yes. Firstly, we've pretty much finished, unless anyone's got anything more to add on the minute in question. Anyone got any more? Don't think so. So we can go back to Marguerite now. I'm really interested for you to tell us what your highlights have been of our podcast so far, and give us a couple of critiques as well.
Yeah,
use the feedback sandwich.
Okay, hospital hall pass. Here we go. No, I started racking my brain about it. What was my favorite episode? And I don't have one. What I do are favorite moments in your rhythms, which is one, how you pull everybody's piñata, Priyank. You're like the humor. You all have humor, and also giving me, it feels like social support. So, well, there was one moment that really stood out in a podcast. And I couldn't remember where it was, but you went off on a tangent. You didn't say,
best moment.
What was that? There's you.
The best moments. I try to advocate for tangents because I think that's what a lot of fun is.
Yes, go on, Marguerite.
This was a very inspiring tangent. You somehow started talking about having an altar in your home. I think maybe referencing from the autobiography of a yogi, having an altar in your home and how that feels. And so when you share things like that, it's like, oh yeah, it reinforces. I'm going to get my cushion, my meditation stick, my area with my window. And so it just really refining it. I've been refining it. And so now, yeah, it's like, oh boy, going to my meditation room. I don't have to do anything. Everything is there. I'm fully equipped for the ride. So it's moments like that when you're sharing your individual experiences with the practices, what you're doing, what actions you're taking, and the incredible, of course, results.
Oh, very nice. Thank you so much. Yeah, we do like to do that, but then people complain that our episodes are too long. And then when Chris goes on tangents, especially about the weather, I have to beat him with the metaphoricals.
It's really hot right now.
Here it comes.
I wasn't going to mention Priyank. You opened the door. Yeah.
Here we go.
Weather report 101. No, it's nice to hear, because I think during the COVID time especially, there's not hasn't been as much getting together in the communities as there had been prior to 2020. So it's it's one of the reasons why I suppose we got together in some ways to talk about Guruji and to share our joy in that. So it's good to hear.
Indeed. You didn't give us any critique. You were supposed to. The feedback sandwich goes one, like a few compliments, and then one, like
it's actually
improvement.
It's the same feedback for the negative as well.
Well, I think what happens is if it gets too dull, I probably pass out, and so I wouldn't even remember what to criticize.
Oh, there's the critique. Sometimes it's dull, and she passes out.
Yeah.
So guys, if you're looking for ways to reduce, Chris, if you were a few years ago, if you were looking for ways to reduce your alcohol habit, you should have listened to podcasts such as this one, and you would have had the impact of passing out without alcohol consumption.
Yeah. You could argue the opposite way as well, I suppose. But the question might be, how many times have you passed out? And but we'll not go there. We'll not go there.
Margaret.
About criticism, I just remembered, and this ties in with my new fellowship, live fellowship. I mean, you're my virtual, but I have the live at the Self-Realization Fellowship Temple. Now that my lifestyle has changed, I can go and volunteer. I've never felt so happy cleaning a toilet as I do when I'm at the temple. But there was one devotee there who I met, Sharon, and we were talking about how much we enjoy working there, even though it's physical. And she mentioned her knee, and then she said, oh, no, I've got to remember the 3 C's. Don't complain, don't criticize, don't condemn. But I just thought that ties in with the habits, right? Just observing if I'm criticizing. The 3 C's, I find that makes it easy to remember.
Mm-hmm. And I read that actually recently with, again, one of the lessons, Guruji simply saying, be a friend to all, and saying how, don't speak irritative words, and whatever you say, have it be calmness and peace and loving and friendly and everything. Although criticism can be given in that way, but probably to a similar vein to what you're saying. I just read that last night, so on point.
Yeah, I've tried to use an affirmation to stop my critical nature. And that affirmation, I think we may have done before, but I'll say again, which is, as I radiate sympathy and goodwill to others, I open the channels for God's love to come to me. Divine love is a magnet that attracts all blessedness. Jai Guru.
Jai Guru.
Thank you.